Hello, everyone. I hope you're looking forward to a lovely evening. It's a sunny day here in San Francisco. You can see out my window over there. And I'm just offering a little word of encouragement, support regarding your midterm exam that has opened today. It opened this morning. Many of you are quite used to taking exams in Canvas, but I wanted to personalize the experience a little bit more and go over a few points. First of all, I decided to schedule the due date for Monday at 11:59 p.m., giving you an extra day to study and process the content module material from this week, which is the Indus Valley Civilization. I am going to now share my screen and just show you where to find the exam and what kinds of resources are available for you and offer you a few tips. And as always, you can send me an email. Generally, it's best through Canvas because they pop up right away. And if you're in the midst of the exam and having difficulty and I see it, I will certainly respond to you. So let me share my screen. Okay, so here is your module page along with my own desktop here. And if you scroll down to right under the guidelines for your first paper, your formal analysis paper, you will see the midterm. First of all, you should definitely have watched the videos in the formal analysis module. It doesn't have a week assigned to it. It's all preparatory for your paper assignment, but it's relevant to the exam because some of the formal elements discussed in your first week of reading are more clearly elaborated here in these videos. So you'll be optimizing your labor by reviewing or watching these videos in preparation for the exam because it's highly relevant to your paper as well. As for the midterm, if you have midterm anxieties, you don't like taking exams, and online exams are even more frightening, I do have a little simple video tutorial that goes over some strategies to deal with exam anxieties because you shouldn't waste one bit of your consciousness on worry when you take an exam. You should be very deliberate and allow all your energy to be focused on your responses. And it's a matter of retraining your perspective and your habits of mind to achieve that. The midterm itself is here. You can review the instructions now before you start the quiz. I actually started the quiz myself to run a test. So it says resume quiz here, but for you, it will say take quiz. Once you click this blue button, then you will have 3 hours to complete the exam and it doesn't stop. So you should plan to take it and have a nice window of time open. It shouldn't take more than an hour to an hour and a half for prepared students. I want to let you know, I'm going to click on this and here we go. So as I'm not going to show the question, but as you move through the exam, there's only one question at a time. So you kind of have to scroll down past the instructions each time. And the reason for that is if there's a problem with your computer and your connection is lost, you don't lose most of your exam in that process. So each time you complete a question, it saves. So it's really nice for that reason, but it's a bit cumbersome. You have to click through each question, but it's better that way. You can move around the questions here up on this sidebar. And I really encourage you to think about answering the long questions first, especially if hopefully you will have prepared the essays in advance, and then you can just kind of write them out or copy them into the long answer question fields. Questions 34 and 35 are worth 1/3 of your grade. They're 25 points a piece in value. What can happen is students who haven't prepared well and are racing to try to do well in the limited time will bog down on these early low point questions and run out of time by the time they get to the really heavy questions, the high point questions. So you may want to think about starting here and then going back to the first questions. Now, the first batch of questions are short answer, multiple choice, and true and false. And they're kind of at times a bit logic related. So I might ask you to choose the best answer of several right answers, or there might be more than one right answer. So it tests a certain kind of mind and a certain kind of aptitude. And it's not infrequent that I have students who do very well or poorly on that first part, but still do well in the exam because they excel in other parts of the exam that are more verbal and written. So I also don't want you to get overwhelmed by the short questions and mentally throw yourself off, especially if you have prepared for the longer questions. So to understand what I'm talking about with these long and short questions, I'm going to go straight over to the study guide, but you should review these instructions and notice in red, if you don't finish by the 11:59 deadline on Monday night, you will not just be deleted as a student taking my exam. You can finish the exam as long as you have some time left and submit it a little bit late. I prefer you not do that, but please do that if you find yourself in that situation, because once again, students will find themselves, oh, it's 11:58, and they have these last two high point questions to do and they do nothing, and then they do very poorly on the exam. Finish the exam. It's better to finish the exam on time. The second best is to finish it a little late. The worst is to just give up and not complete it. Okay. Now here we have a study guide, and my exams rely heavily on a detailed study guide, which you can work on over the weekend, tonight. And I really recommend you sit down with a pen and paper and you start with the very week one module, and you go through the vocabulary and you find in the reading or in the videos where these terms are referenced, and jot down what they mean or what they are. And these terms will be significantly what your very first short answer questions will be based on. They will also be based on these works of art here. So I have organize the works of art on your study guide based on your 3 modules. So the first week we had an introduction to the arts of Asia. You saw a wide variety of works of art, and from different geographical regions in Asia, very different mediums, and you studied questions like, what is durable, ephemeral, or temporal art? What kinds of mediums do we find defining painting, Asian painting, defining sculpture? How do we learn to look at those objects and think about them and see more than we realize? And that's called formal analysis. That's all relating to these images in week 1. And then you can supplement that by looking at the module that's designed around your first paper assignment. The other 2 are self-evident. Paleolithic and Neolithic was week 2. You don't need to know that many images for that week, but you do need to know about the context I've provided, both about the geographical regions of South and Southeast Asia, as well as the difference between Paleolithic and Neolithic art. You really need to be clear, what is Paleolithic? What kinds of behavior human behavior defines the Paleolithic period, and what changes with the Neolithic? So review my videos, review the slides, review any links in the module to support your ability to identify these few works. The same with the Indus Valley Civilization. Here are just a few images, works of art that you should certainly know. The reason you should know them is not only because they may appear in your the very low point short answer part of your exam, but they also may appear as something you will need to identify in the part 2 of the exam, which are questions that are worth 5 points apiece rather than 2 points. And you may need to identify one of the images listed here in the exam and talk about it a little bit. Talking about part 2 of the exam, these are questions, and there will be, other than image identification that may appear in this section, there are no surprises. The short answer questions are drawn from these questions. So if you're able to write good answers to all of these, you will be very well prepared for that section. Similarly, part 3, long answer questions, you have 2 essay questions, and one is a compare and contrast, and you will have to, you will have two possibilities to choose from. You will be presented with two works of art of Paleolithic and Neolithic Indus, and to compare with in an Indus Valley work, or you'll have the option to compare and contrast a Paleolithic work and a Neolithic work. So you can choose which one you want to write about, but you'll have two identifications based on the list here. And then you will write essays about these works. So you can't write this essay in advance, but you can study kinds of how would I compare and contrast the Paleolithic and Neolithic period, which we call prehistoric, that is before history is being written, versus the Indus Valley as a civilization, which is distinctly different. It has a written language, has laws, it has a lot of signs of a more developed, stable, settled culture. So we call it a civilization, and review that in my lecture. If you're unclear about that, can you compare any of these Indus Valley works of art here? Can you imagine writing an essay where you would compare one of these to one of these objects? Okay, and or can you imagine comparing and contrasting objects even here within this small selection, Paleolithic and Neolithic? Because that within Paleolithic and Neolithic, there are significant changes, innovations, and differences. And most importantly for this class, are engaging or reflecting different kinds of human experience and concerns as human way of life changes from a nomadic existence or semi-nomadic to dependent on animals and following animals to an existence of domesticating animals and domesticating plants. So review those videos. Finally, in your context and connections, you can certainly prepare 3 of these essays in advance. Actually, all 4. Yes, so these 4, all 4 of these essays, there'll be 2 from these 4 that'll be on your exam. And if you write an essay for each of these, you'll be ready for that last question, number 35 on the exam, to just put it into the exam. In one of them, several of them, you'll need to find supporting works of art from our modules to create the essays. Now, a word of warning, which I have actually written pretty strongly at the beginning of the exam, is it's all too easy to just not want to sort of go through my module, because there's no search engine in our class's module. You can't run a search in Canvas and find what you're looking for. So it's very tempting to use Google or another search engine to find a quick answer. Once in a while, that works fine, and you get the correct answer. It matches what's in my module. But very, very often, you get an answer that may be right relative to a different context or a different field, and it's absolutely wrong on your exam. Furthermore, it's pretty obvious to me when you're cutting and pasting, and I will mark you down for that, especially when it's coming clearly off of Wikipedia or another website. You need to be really, part of an exam is working with concepts, learning how to talk about them, express them yourself, and you need to be using our module content. And some of you may have heard about artificially generated text, artificial chat GPT, and these other programs. Those can be maybe very useful for in some fields, but it's absolutely disastrous to try to use them in a class like this, because, and I have tools and filters to identify when a student is doing this. And the fact is, these artificial intelligence gives many different answers to the same question. You can run the same question 5 times and get 5 different answers. They're very formulaic, well written, but formulaic, and they're very clearly not relating to themes and material from our course. So don't succumb to the temptation or the fad about this tool. One day, maybe in our class or another class, we can look at this artificial intelligence tools as a way to think about how to compose our answers, because the organizational structure of these formulaic responses is pretty useful to think about structuring ideas, but the content, it's not fact-checked, it varies, and it often is absolutely wrong, and especially so in classes with highly specialized content like ours. So I'm just warning you, I've had students do this, and I don't want you to do poorly on the exam when you could have done very well simply by applying yourself to the module content itself. So that said, I look really forward to reading your exams. I'm very excited to see what you say. I remember I do drop your lowest exam and replace with your highest score. So if this exam you don't do well, don't despair. It was considered a learning experience, and be ready to do well on the second two. Hopefully you'll do really well on this one, so you'll have a cushion for the rest of the class. All right, have a wonderful weekend. Don't hesitate to contact me if you have concerns, issues with your schedule, and I can work with you. Okay, have a wonderful weekend and evening.